He managed the Texas Rangers, he managed the Boston Red Sox, he managed in the Dodger farm system, and he was a bench coach in Montreal with Felipe Alou. Kevin Kennedy joining the bite. And you mentioned, which was a really interesting point to me, the fact that GMs 10 years ago and before were baseball guys, mostly former players, and now it's all about money, 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 and business. How has that hurt the game?
Well, I think, if you've got good evaluators, it's okay. I'm not saying you have to have played the game to be a good GM. It's just when you're a GM and you haven't played the game and you're 28 years old, let's face it, you haven't lived a lot of life experiences. And I think what we're talking about in that dugout, especially in the big leagues with multimillionaires, you have to understand the temperament of high-class athletes, or world-class athletes, I should say. Some of them aren't so high-class.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
But they certainly are the premium of athletes in baseball throughout the world, because otherwise, why would the Japanese players want to come over here once they become free agents? They want to play against the best, and that's what any athlete wants to do in any sport, in any country. They want to play against the best in the world. So there's a temperament you have to understand. And I just think many times when things are dictated based on stats only, I don't think some people understand that the temperament, and you have to really understand that to manage that. It's not unlike any other high-profile business in some regards, but in others, because athletes are considered a piece of meat, so to speak, and you're supposed to snap to and be able to respond. Take Manny Ramirez, for example. Here's a prime example, which is not in the book because this just happened, but it's a good example. If you read it, I had some experiences with Juan Gonzalez. I had to convince him many times to play. Here's a guy making $49 million. I had to talk him into playing. I can't tell you how many times. He wouldn't go on his rehab assignment, things like that. You wouldn't believe it, but that's a fact. So Manny Ramirez, over the weekend, wants to get out of Boston. Then a day and a half later, he wants to stay in Boston. I mean, you wouldn't think a guy making $20 million a year would have a care in the world or a problem after winning the World Series MVP last year for the Red Sox, but he does. And those are the things you have to deal with. There's no stat that can tell you about that. The stats are on there, 45 home runs, 140 RBIs, 330 hitter. But they don't tell you the daily grind that you go through with players in trying to get them to perform at peak level through a 162-game season. So I think that's where the advantage, when the Dodgers had Al Campanis, for example, as you know, he was phenomenal at that with Tommy Lasorda, John Sherholtz with Bobby Cox, that tandem, Walt Jockey and Tony La Russa. Some of these guys I've mentioned didn't play necessarily, but they have a great rapport with their manager. They don't turn over, and the organization stays strong year after year. When you turn over your manager and you're hired as a GM, you turn over your manager every year and a half, you got a problem either evaluating talent or not knowing what direction you want that organization to go, and consequently, that filters down through the whole system in the minor leagues and ultimately affects the players and your record on the field.
All right, Kevin, we appreciate it. We are so fortunate that you gave us a few minutes today.
Oh, thanks for having me once again. Keep in touch.
All right, drive safe.